In this example, to find the value of the inverse at -4, what we need to do is that because the x and y values flip, is to determine what the x value would be to this original function here to get the output value of -4. What this means is that in other words, that if I solve this equation, see what makes this equal to -4, that will determine again what the value of the inverse is when I plug in and I input the number -4 into the inverse. So let's solve this equation. Well, to solve this equation requires us to subtract 1 from both sides. And we have 5 times the cube root of x equals -5. We'll divide both sides by +5. So the 5's reduce each other out. And the cube root of x equals a total of 1. And well, to get rid of the cube root, we need to use the reciprocal power, which is 3. And we're going to raise, this is a -1, and we're going to raise both sides to -3 power. So that's going to cancel out. These two things reduce out, and we're going to end up only with x on the left side. And -1 to the third power, that equals to -1. So this right here is going to be your answer. And again, what I want you to understand here is like, why is this the answer? Well, the reason that this is the answer is because, again, since the x value and the y value are flipping, if I plug in, now that I know the solution, if I plug in -1 into this function, 5 times the cube roots of -1 plus 4, this is going to end up equaling to the answer of -4. I'm not going to do the math, just believe me that it equals to -4. This is -1 times 5 is -5 plus 4 is going to be a total of -4. Okay, now because again the inverse flips everything, that if I plug in -4, again flip it here, this is going to flip. I'm going to end up with a total of -1. Hold on, I made a mistake here. That should not have been a 4, that should have been a 1. Okay, so you see that's how I get the 4. So -1 times the 5, well, this is going to be -1 times the 5 is -5, and a +4 gives me that 4 right there. +1, keep saying 4. +1 gives me a -4 right there. And again, like I mentioned, since this is true, all right, the inverse again flips everything. So the x becomes the y and the y becomes the x. So on the inverse, if I make this the input value, this will have to be the output value. So that's the reason why this works, because it's switching yet again the x and the y. So we do that from the very beginning. This is just another fancy way of writing y, and I make that the y value that we want to get. I can then solve this equation and I get again the solution or the value to this input of -4 into the inverse.